to the Know, Grow, and Scale podcast, where I, Laura Johns, founder and CEO of The Business Growers, interview business leaders to uncover secrets of how to know, grow, and scale their organization effectively. Today, I'm excited to have Atlanta-based tech marketer Landon Howell, great college friend of mine that I've not caught up with in quite some time. So Landon, I'd love to hear all about what you're doing as the head of marketing at Rocketplace and in Atlanta, and hear all about what you've been doing the last decade. So welcome to the podcast.
I am excited to be on the podcast, and we have more times, we have more questions and more catch up than we have time today. So
yes, we'll do that offline. We don't need to share that with the world.
We can do another round. Yes.
Landon, I want to hear just pretend I don't know, but your personal story and really how you got to where you are, because you've really found a unique place in technology. And we have the same degree, I think, from Mississippi College. So I think I always love hearing success stories of MC grads. So tell me about your path into this tech world.
Oh my gosh. When I went to Mississippi College, I did not know, actually I do know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a youth minister. And that changed pretty quickly because at the time, just before I went to school, I'd started selling video games on eBay. We had this giant, it was like a Goodwill or a secondhand store in my hometown in Alabama. And I went in there one day and found some old video games, and they were selling them for 50 cents, 25 cents, $1. And I thought, well, I need some extra money. What if I take these home, polish them up, and put them on eBay? And, the first one I bought for 50 cents, it sold for $50. The second video game I bought for $1, it sold for $100. And I thought, these are good returns.
Yeah.
And if nothing else is paying for my gas. And for like the Friday night runs over to Sonic.
Right.
This is good money. So when I went to MC, when I went to Mississippi College, I thought, I'm going to be youth minister, but I'm going to do this eBay stuff on the side. And pretty quickly I realized, a little side hustle. Who among us? Who among us didn't start with a side hustle? And so when I got to Mississippi College, I realized I didn't want to be a youth minister, and I really liked to talk, and so therefore communications. But when I chose the path, I went in to speak to my advisor and said, what do I need to graduate, to get a piece of paper?
Right.
Because I've got this side business, these side businesses running, and they said you need a 3.0. And so I graduated undergrad with a 3.07.
There we go.
Then after that, went to grad school. They said the same thing. You need a 3.0. I graduated with a 3.12. They don't put your GPA on that piece of paper,
right.
Which is pretty good for me.
And I will say, my dad has always said, if you're really good at your job, you should only have to show your resume one time.
Yeah.
And then from then on, you get grabbed from other places. Yeah.
Yeah, you quickly realize how important that degree is in the beginning, but at the same time how it becomes important in different ways.
Right.
And I've worked now at probably 10 different companies, and can't tell you the last time where I went to school was like the focus of what I did, but it was a foundation and the catalyst.
Right.
So anyway, that's where we met. That's where we became friends, and what really bit me was probably the same thing a lot of the people watching this or listening, or a lot of your clients and customers have, which is like an obsession over solving some sort of problem. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the best way I put it is like obsession is an unfair advantage. And for me, in the early days, the obsession was there's a lot of different ways to make money. And then the obsession transitioned into, there are other founders, other creators of businesses out there who have an obsession, but there's things they don't know because they're 24, 25, 26. This is their first job, much less their first managerial role. They've never hired or fired before. They don't know what it's like to go out there and fundraise or to build up a team. And so in the last few years, my obsession has really shifted towards like, how can I be an enabler of these builders of businesses, these founders? And typically what that looks like is I come in as an executive, lead marketing and growth, build foundational marketing and operations at companies. And after 2 or 3 years, kind of find my path to move on. And it's been fun. It is something that took me a few years to get over because it was so different and so odd. And because my wife and I had to move literally every 2 years from Seattle to Boston to San Francisco to Birmingham to now Atlanta. But that's how we got to where we got.
Do you feel like, going back to moving really quickly, just because I'm curious, do you feel like, 10 years ago when you and Chelsea, your beautiful bride, started moving to be where the work was now post-COVID, do you feel like you could stay in Atlanta essentially forever? Is your company headquartered in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Are you headquartered?
I think anyone can be in. We are headquartered in Palo Alto, California, so just south of San Francisco. But we will have marketing and some operations focus here. I think that in 2023, you can be based in Atlanta. I think you can be based in Laurel. I think you can be based in Boise. I think you can be based in Bangladesh. So long as your business aligns, really depending on, at the end of the day, not everyone is shipping computer code like we are. Some people are making donuts. And so it really depends. We can get into this in a minute, but I do have a strong conviction about what it looks like as you build the team and as you do or don't meet in person. But yeah, when we actually moved to Atlanta just a few months before COVID, and one of the reasons was, hey, I was consulting at the time with early stage startups, early stage venture backed startups. And I said, hey, if we're in Atlanta, I can fly direct to anywhere at any time. If my clients need me, I can just go. So there was a lot of thoughtfulness there, but at the same time, as I'm growing in Atlanta, there is a pool of talent in the backyard versus like having to go and look elsewhere. So I think that there are pluses and minuses. Obviously, it's more expensive in Atlanta than it is where I grew up in Alabama. But it all gets down to personal preference and really what the founders or the business owners, where they want to build, what they want to do.
Right. So let's start back when you were looking for your first job. Like, is the technology component, or like how you got into all this experience, particularly in tech, was that just because you were on Indeed and applied for a job and it happened to be tech, and then that started your path? Because that's kind of how it happened. I was babysitting for the CEO of a tech company, really? and then all of a sudden now I've got a tech marketing agency. So it's like, but that's what I've done for the last however many years, and that's what I feel like I'm best at. How did you kind of pave your way in technology?
I totally forgot that story, and I love that story because I think it speaks to what we think careers will look like versus what they actually look like. So what we think careers look like is when we are 18, 19, and we're going to college, or even we're getting out of college. I'm going to take this step. I'm going to do the work to get me to the next step. I'm going to do the work to get me to the next step. So on and so forth. And then, when I'm 60, I will become CEO, and I will do that for 5 years, and then I will retire. And then, I don't know, go to Europe.
Right. Play golf.
It doesn't really happen that way. Yeah. Grab a backpack and go. It doesn't really happen that way. And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And I wish we talk about it more. I tend to view it more as, instead of incremental steps, where everything is equal and you get what you deserve exactly when you deserve it. I kind of view it more as Tarzan swinging through the forest on vines. So like you are moving forward sometimes, and sometimes you are not. You
right.
are regressing, but sometimes you're going this way. Sometimes you're going right. this way. But regardless, you are actually over time making forward movement through the forest. And I think that's a totally fine way. And if you ask people what their career paths were, very few would say, I did X, I did Y. And some people would actually say, I don't want to know what's going to happen. I want to just kind of pursue my passions. And so for me, it was, I grew up in a town of 10,000 people in North Alabama. And I loved my life there, but I thought, like, what's a fun challenge I can have? And I'd always wanted to move to Seattle. So I found a room on Craigslist, and moved out, didn't have a job, had a little bit of credit card debt. And so to supplement while I interviewed, I this is not a joke. This sounds like a bit. I did, when you go to the supermarket and they have the tables and there's like the free taste testing you can do. I did that for a granola company. So I moved to Seattle. My car died on the way there. And so I get there with literally no money because I sold my car for $500, took the cash to rent a car to finish the trip to Seattle. I get there and broke, a little bit of credit card debt, living with these strangers whose room I found on Craigslist. And so I'm just going to Whole Foods and putting on my North Face vest and like giving away samples. And through that, there's no like deep learning there from the granola company. But what I did learn was like, I really, I want a job and I want to make some money. And, there weren't a lot of jobs in communications, especially ones that paid well in Seattle, and that cost of living. So, a tech company by the name of KimPoint said, hey, come in, you've got a comms degree, master's degree in PR. You can work here for 6 months, and what we will do is we will learn the company for 6 months. Then we will transition you into a different role. You will actually create our PR within the company, and sounds great. Awesome. So I come in day one knowing that as a sales rep, I actually don't have to sell a thing. I'm just here for 6 months to learn the business and then go create my own team in the company. That was accidentally a superpower, because I would call someone and say, hey, I'm Landon. I'm selling X. You need X. But if you don't want to buy X from me, that's totally fine. And the very hands-off nature, the kind of other-centered mindset was a bit of an accidental superpower.
Yeah.
And through that process, really fell in love with the sales aspect of business, which not a lot of people do love, but I kind of tricked myself into it. And so through that, I was like, okay, now I'm in sales in this org, but I just had this pull towards marketing. I had a pull towards, I loved being at Kim Point, but we were around 200 people, and I wish I could have been there for the first 2 people. So from there, from Seattle back to Birmingham, to join a smaller team, to Boston, to actually create a startup, to San Francisco, to join another one that was scaling. It's really just been that passion of like, hey, you guys have a really good idea. You're obsessed with the problem, but you're not doing a lot of marketing. Maybe you focus too much on the product or not enough on marketing, and coming in and joining with those folks. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And those in the audience, they know how intoxicating that can be. Yeah. We don't look at it as like a business that isn't doing marketing or is doing a bad job at marketing. We don't look at it as, oh God, I don't want to really join. Right. You look at it as, oh man, if you already had marketing figured out, we wouldn't be talking.
Right.
Because this is exciting for me to see what you have and the fact that we can go and build a plan and
right.
grow. So.
Well, and I love that you said that, because the whole reason I call this podcast the Know, Grow, Scale podcast is because I've kind of used those as 3 foundational pillars when I talk to somebody to discover or audit where they are. Because a lot of times, you need marketing if you're day 1 or if you're day 601. It just at some level you need somebody like a Landon in there to help you like culturally, internally cultivate what the business needs from a structure standpoint, and then like you said, kind of see them on their way. And then at some levels where we serve best is that less than 25 employees that need leadership, but also like need somebody to just fix something on the website, like need that implementation factor. And you kind of need some of everything at different phases. So I think it's kind of cool to recognize that, at some phases of your business, you might need internal headcount. At some phases of your business, you can't afford internal headcount. You just need somebody to do the grind work, Okay, so let's talk about ups and downs real quick, because I think we can all say we've got bumps and bruises. So what would you consider like your professional high and your professional low? I feel like even though you just told the granola story and that might seem like a low, I feel like that's kind of a high, because that's kind of like you.
No, it was fun. It was fun. It's who doesn't love granola, right?
Right.
And I think that like lows are not just like, oh, we had this bad thing happen. Like everyone has bad things happen. I think a low is when you're smart enough to recognize when something should happen and you don't do it. And so I think a low, there was a sports social media app, is a sports social media app called FanCred, which we launched in Boston actually almost 10 years ago, which feels weird. January 2013, I moved to Boston, and week number 1 experienced my first snowstorm, and I'm trekking around this town, sleeping on a friend's couch. My wife is back in Birmingham trying to sell our house, and we really did launch successfully. We were a top app in the sports section of the App Store. We were in one of the first classes of Techstars, which is the number 1 or number 2 accelerator in the world for startups. We were named Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Most Brilliant Companies. We were on the Today Show. Like, it was happening, but we were not growing at the rate we needed to. And we weren't honest about that. It's fine that we weren't growing at the rate that we needed to. Every company has that. It doesn't matter if you're selling, I love to use the donuts analogy just because donuts. Yeah. But like, it does not matter if you were selling donuts or shipping code. You should have goals for growth. And if you're not hitting them, you need to have those difficult conversations, because as uncomfortable as they are, they're necessary. So I think that a low for me was not when FanCred was sold to a partner in Boston, but not in the way that we wanted to. And, no one, we didn't finish and buy ourselves a new house or new car. We finished and high-fived and went on our merry way. Yeah. And I think that if we had honest conversations earlier about growth, which to be honest, I was responsible for, we would have done more. But I think that we just all would point to things and go, oh, well, we're on the Today Show or we're in this magazine. It's like those do not enable growth.
Right.
Those are not even signs
Right.
of growth. They're just signs that someone thought you were doing something interesting, and there you are.
Right.
So I would say that is one of the lows, and I think that's one of the lows that most people can relate to, is that when you look back and go, oh God, I should have hired that person sooner. I should have let go of that person sooner. I should have made this change. Or like, hey, like I am not happy with the velocity of how we're doing this project. That's a low, and so yeah, we could talk lows all day long.
That's good learning. In my head, hearing you say that, it was like, just because somebody has the Chanel purse doesn't mean their bank account stacked. Like you gotta, even if you feel good about what's happening, you gotta look at the numbers. Which a lot of times those of us that are creative or go get them based, it's really not the thing we want to be looking at is the spreadsheet. Like I stay away from the spreadsheet. I'm like, as long as it's going up and to the right, that's all I want to know, and don't tell me the details. So that's hard for those of us that are motivated differently.
Yep.
That's tough.
And there's also transition there into highs, like you said. Like people can do with their money what they want to do with their money. I grew up around money in my part of Alabama because it was coal country, but my time in San Francisco was also an eye opener because you're surrounded by a lot of people who came into a significant amount of wealth early in their life. And the thing that I found is that like what wealth does not change you; it just exposes what you value. And that's fine. I can remember showing up for my interview and one of the founders met me at the door and he was just wearing socks. I said, I like your socks. And he said, yeah, I don't like shoes. I just like to wear socks. If you'd bumped into that guy in normal life, you would have thought, oh, who is this person? You would have known that he was a Harvard grad and worth, X number, how many millions of dollars he is now. And I think that over time, your vision of like what success looks like changes as well. And those highs actually change. What you think will be highs are actually just milestones. If you had told me in college one day, you will be an Entrepreneur magazine, your company will be on the Today Show, I would say, oh my God, like I have a stack of those of Entrepreneur magazines on my desk. Like the Today Show is watched by millions of people. Those are just milestones. Really, really the highs are more in realizing, I have a core belief that startups and companies without existential urgency don't win. That doesn't mean panic. That doesn't mean, panic attacks or, waking up in the middle of the night sweating. But it means pretend that the bear is always chasing you.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to lose that often. And so where I felt the best was looking around going, we are the chart is up and to the right, and we are pretending like it's definitely not, right, that it's the opposite. And so I think that to me, the highs are seeing that we have created an organization and a culture and a mindset around that kind of product or growth velocity, if you will. I'm using too much jargon.
No, I like it, and I like the air quotes too.
But like, but those are the highs because at the end of the day, I've got all that I need. I joke with my wife that if in the future, should we come into grander riches, all I really want is a comfortable pair of shoes and a really good Wi-Fi connection. That's it. That's all I need.
Yeah. I thought you were about to say and a really good wife, but you went into Wi-Fi.
No, I've already got a great wife. Good, I want reliable Wi-Fi. No, and it's what you view changes over time, not just as you grow, but as you have different experiences. So for me, it's tough. It's really tough to start and run a business and to grow a business. And so for me, the highs can't be those like if you start a business and you think I'm going to sell in 10 years, if that's the only moment where you're happy, those 10 years are going to be miserable because it's your obsession to get to that point that is your unfair advantage. And if you don't have that obsession, it's going to be awful and miserable. And I've talked to plenty of people who've had that and they go, the payday wasn't worth it. Anyway.
That's good. Okay, so we're kind of getting toward the finish line, wrapping. I try to keep these like something that somebody could listen to, on a commute. Not that anybody commutes anymore. Everybody stays home. So while they're fixing their coffee. Okay, so as a marketer for a startup, if you're going to talk to the business owner or founder, what are kind of your best tips and practices for marketing your business? What would you? I know that's kind of broad, but tell me what your number ones are.
I think that there are timeless ones, and I think that there are timely ones. So one that is timeless, actually, I'll start with a combination of both. One that is timeless and timely is to do more with less. That does not mean you have to do it all yourself. In fact, the biggest conversations I've had over the last month is, Landon, my head count is 25. I need to get down to 5 so that I have financial runway through 2023. What should I do? So lifeboat exercises, or conversations of, fractional CMOs, fractional hires, contractors. So I would say, stop trying to, because we are builders, we try to learn everything. Don't do that. You have the one or two things that you're great at. Find the people who are great at the other things you want to do. If that's a social media manager, if it is a fractional CMO, if it's an accountant, doesn't matter. Find them and give the job to them. And the beauty of a remote world is that they can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And they can be up and running. There are services that will just provide it to you. You don't even have to find them. Just find the services.
Right.
Another one is, this is, I don't want to say controversial, but like, make time to build in person. You mentioned like no one really commutes anymore. I agree, but I love it. The only reason I'm home today is because I was a little under the weather this morning. But most days I will get in my car and drive somewhere, even though I don't have to. Have a space to create so that your mind can just leave one room and go to another. If you are early in your business, build shoulder to shoulder, like that swapping of information, the serendipity of the conversations. It can't be replaced. I do believe we will look up in 2 years. And despite the good that remote work and distributed teams have brought to the world, there will be some very impressive companies who said the only reason we could do this is because we got in a room together to build.
Totally agree.
That's my controversial. Yeah, that's my
controversial. And I will
statement.
say, every time I look at the line item, although I don't like a spreadsheet, I do look at my costs every month. And whenever I do look at that, I have that line item for office space, and I'm like, do we need this? But, we collaborate 2 days a week together. So everybody's home 3 days a week, and we're together on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And on Wednesdays, we have no external meetings. So we only meet together. And that's one of my favorite. Honestly, like, I look forward to Wednesdays the most because we're only collaborating the whole day, like getting ideas and working together and, bringing up client challenges and working through it. So I totally agree. And I agree that it's controversial too, but it is important. It's really important.
And that's all we wanted. I mean, if we think back to COVID, we're coming up on the three year anniversary of when
we were like
really
dying
began.
for human interaction.
That's all we wanted. Yes, just to get out of the house. And so I'm not saying that those feelings to get out then mean that we all need to go back to 8 to 5 jobs and have to commute every day. But I do believe. I do believe in the value of building in person. And at the end of the day, also, I just don't want to be plugged into the matrix and do the work. I want to build a company with people I like. Otherwise, there's plenty of jobs I can do just by logging on to terminal or knocking out, checking the boxes. So,
right. Yep. Okay. So tell me what you're excited about in 2023. What are you looking forward to the most? What's your company doing? Anything that we need to be watching for? I'm
excited to see who is really cut out for this. And I don't want this to sound flippant. I don't want to be mean, but it is very easy to start a company. It is so easy. In the time that you and I have had this conversation, someone could have logged on to stripe.com and began to create their LLC. They could have gone to hover.com to buy the URL. They could have gone to squarespace.com to begin to create their website. They could build a business in 30 minutes or create a business in 30 minutes. But to build a business, to maintain a business through highs and lows is really tough. And I never want a business to fail, but I do. There's a need for culling. And in my industry, we're in financial technology, and we are focused on creating the fidelity of crypto. We think that crypto was and still is to some extent full of snake oil salesmen. We believe that there's true value and true utility in crypto, but there's been a lot of gross stuff the last couple of years. And so for me, the last 2 months professionally has been kind of good. Personally, it's been not good for a lot of people who are investors like myself, but professionally, those who believe it in the long term, we're happy to see a lot of the culling happen. And so I think that regardless of what industry you're in, if you're listening to this, there's going to be that. And if you had a 5x year over year growth target that you're aiming for, it's probably 2x is probably going to be enough.
Right.
Because you're going to lose a lot of competitors. People aren't going to be spending the way that they were spending prior. So that's my hope for this year. I'm sure you were expecting something sunnier than that.
No.
But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a tough year overall, and it will be a year that most people point back to and say that was the year we got our act together.
Yeah, that's good. So where, I know that you're not necessarily honing in on your personal brand, although you might be, but where could somebody find you if they're, first of all, follow Landon on Twitter. He's funny, but not as funny as his cousin Karen. Where I know you're on LinkedIn, you're on Twitter. Are you at Landon Howell on Twitter? Is that your handle?
I am at Landon Howell on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think that if you want professional stuff, follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I know that's a weird thing to say, but
No,
I do
you've
most
got
of my
good insight.
professional stuff there.
Yeah.
I try. And I publish a lot of my thoughts at landonhowell.com. So I'll publish every week on different startup and small business problems. And I've got free resources there as well. I know that whenever people say I've got free resources, they're trying to sell you something.
You're
I
like,
don't.
no.
I think it's lame. No, well, there's so many people before me who just gave me free insight. I feel weird charging people. Landon, what are your list of 90 tools that I would need? Is like, here, just have it.
Right.
Like I will give it to you the same way that other people gave it to me. And so, but yeah, and if you're based in Atlanta, I'm an advisor up at the Atlanta Tech Village. So every 2 Fridays, I'm there for office hours. And anyone can come in and ask me anything about marketing or operations.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
Well, good for you. Well, thank you. Again, we're going to do a catch up offline, but thank you for taking some time to share your insight. And I look forward to catching up with you more soon.